Before anything else, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of the Dean of the College of Liberal Arts of De La Salle University, Professor Dr. Ador Torneo. Good morning, Dean. Okay. So, magkakaroon tayo ngayon ng isang interesting na panel discussion with Dr. Yum and Dr. JJ. Pero I hope everyone's okay, no? Uh, Again, kung face-to-face tayo bukas, don't worry. Lunch is on us. Okay? Pero ngayon, ano muna tayo? Sa mga bahay muna tayo. But before anything else, before we start with the panel discussion, let's give a round of applause to all our teachers here who are teaching philosophy. Okay? Kung hindi man philosophy, mga subjects that are related to it, no, ayan, very, very important yan sa nation building. So, a big round of applause to all of you, no? Pagpatuloy nyo sana yan and I hope you overcome the challenges that come with it, no? So, salamat sa inyong pagpili ng vocation na to. Malaking bagay yan. Anyway, so let's make this very organized, ano? Ganito na lang. We can you can post here a summarized version of your question sa chat area, no? And I will call you. So again, first come first serve and then you can expound on that. Pag na-acknowledge namin kayo, you can either direct it to Dr. Or Dr. JJ or to both of them. And ganun yun ang gawin natin, no? And anyway, since natapos sila ng early sa kanilang lectures, we can have more time with our discussion. So, ito na, may mga may mga nagpasok na ng questions kaagad, no? So, very ito from FEU High School from Mr. Juan Miguel Moreno. This is for Dr. Demeterio. So, yes, Mr. Moreno, go ahead.
Ay- Ayan, good morning po. So first of all, thank you so much to both of our speakers for their discussions. I actually have two questions, one for Dr. Demeterio and another for Dr. Joaquin, but perhaps they may share their both of them may share their insights on these questions. So first for Dr. Demeterio, how can we how can we integrate these ideas, or how can we integrate the very idea of the importance of the humanities um into other disciplines? And I'm coming from the perspective of senior high school kasi with the strengthened senior high school curriculum, natanggal si introduction to philosophy as a core subject for all students. So it's only limited to, I think, Ash or Hume's students po. So yeah, how can we better make sense, or how can we apply philosophical ideas into other disciplines? Or do you also feel that philosophy should have a dedicated space in the curriculum and not just merely dispersed and integrated into other disciplines po? Yun po.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. Um, um, I think I've been using philosophy. So my life story is very different. So I was a philosophy professor in San Beda College full time until our department was shuttered by the Benedictine monks. So I migrated to De La Salle University in the Filipino department. But I'm every now and then I'm supervising philosophy doctoral students in De La Salle University. Now the way I use philosophy in Philippine studies is that I use it as a theory. I use it as a method in in talking about Philippine studies, in talking about heritage studies. I use philosophy there. So maybe that's the easiest, the low hanging fruit that we can do is in integrating philosophy to other humanities and social sciences subjects in senior high school is to extract the theoretical methodological dimensions of philosophy and use it in enriching Philippine humanities and Philippine social sciences. I think I have very limited experience, direct experience with senior high school teaching because I've never taught in senior high school, but I'm mentoring a great number of senior high school teachers in their research. So just recently, I finished mentoring about 20 teachers from the academy. writing or converting some of their manuscripts to Scopus level papers. That's my strategy to infuse their research writing with philosophical theories and methodologies. It might not be acceptable to everyone, but that's my life story. I was exiled from the philosophy. I was removed from a philosophy because our department was shattered in the first place. So I was forced to negotiate it this way. That's my negotiated praxis of philosophy as of the moment. Thank you.
Thank you po, sir. Now, for Dr. Joaquin Hun po, with the diminishing space that philosophy is occupying now, especially in Philippine education, perhaps how can we better make sense of the idea that philosophy ought to positively improve society? Because earlier we've already been talking about the challenges that Filipino scholars are facing. So, parang on a general level, how can we parang positively improve society in spite of the challenges that Filipino philosophers are facing right now po?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Juan Miguel, like the name. Okay, so first, I'm not sure if there's actually a diminishing space that philosophy is occupying in Philippine education. I'm not pro CHED, uh, general education, but I think the idea was, if I'm not mistaken, is that philosophy will be at the bedrock of general education. So if you if you take them by their word, this means that we as philosophers are not really out of the whole picture of uh, basic education. We're there. We're part of it. We're part of the building blocks of basic education. But I know where you're coming from because we're experiencing it in our department as well. So we're worried whether we'll still have some subjects that we'll teach later. But I think the question could be distinguished from how can philosophers, our philosophical training, our ideas of philosophy can improve society, possibly improve society. Now, I'm not sure how old are you. I won't ask. But if you're part of the earlier generation, which I'm assuming because you're part of this early career group, you had some philosophical training and you are undergoing some philosophical training now. And that's a good thing because it's fun to be alive in today's philosophy. 20 years ago, actually, that's not true. 25 years ago, 30, or almost 30 years ago, when I was starting out as a philosopher, no, my teachers are here. So Demetz was my teacher, all the rest of the gang. So I'm not saying that Demetz is old. What I'm saying is that today you have the opportunity not just to learn from our top local philosophers, but really engage philosophers from outside. The internet, AI, YouTube, all the books that you could read are all out there. All the data is all out there on the internet. So it's a great, equalizing mechanism. The thought is, once you learn those things, once you gain the techniques, how would you use these philosophical ideas to, quote and unquote, better our society? I'll give you an example, and this is something that um, Raymond Dunn and I were thinking about a while back. So I think in 2021, 2022, there was this whole discussion about this carbon emissions again because of the SDG program. We need to recalibrate our ideas about climate change, recalibrate our ideas about gas emissions and so on. So we thought about writing a paper on how should we do that exactly? How should we have a kind of policy which would be applied worldwide in terms of reducing gas emissions or fuel emissions. Now, I gave him one idea, and the idea did not come from me personally. It came from someone else, a philosopher in the 1970s, Derek Parfit, where he thought of how to think about the future generations and to leverage or have a kind of economics using that kind of data in your computations about present distributions or present distribution of um, responsibilities and accountabilities. Unfortunately, that idea was not published. We wrote it, but no one uh, got on board. But right now, I'm still developing that idea in another book. What I'm saying is that all those information, I did not learn those information from my teachers. I learned them from discussing things with other philosophers in the world and really, joining conferences and conversing their philosophical ideas. And that hopefully you'll use them to improve, quote unquote, society in general. I hope that helps.
Maraming salamat po.
Salamat din.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moreno, for your questions. Are very, very relevant. And I feel for you, at the rate things are going, I hope that we still have philosophy subjects to teach in the near future. So
We will, Cesar. Have faith because our technical panel chair is here.
Okay, sige, okay. Sige, okay, sige. But anyway, so ito, medyo marami-rami tayong questions na kalinya from Mr. Alex Henson of PUP. So, Mr. Henson, welcome back. Let's go. So, I think he asked a question kanina rin eh. So, meron siya
Hello,
dito.
hello po,
Yeah,
Alex
okay.
Henon po from PUP.
Sorry, Henon, di Henson, sorry. Sorry.
Okay po.
Sorry,
All right.
Henon. Okay, Henon, sige. Sorry.
My inspiration for this question is the ongoing debate on the general education in Gen, and at the same time, the highlighting of the employability versus critical thinking, no, in our curriculum, no, which is postponed, but at the same time still debatable and still So here's my question for both of our speaker, no. With the continuing downgrading of humanities, including also philosophy here and social development studies in the Philippines, which is already happening, no, in favor of a more market-driven, lagay ko yung employability and technical fields, do you think, which is hina-highlight in the debates, emphasizing critical thinking alone is enough to justify the relevance, or do we need a broader reimagining of how these disciplines contribute to the nation building, civic engagement, and social transformation, which in the previous presentation, there are already efforts not to have a civic engagement and nation building ideas, no, given by the previous philosophers that we have. But now that yung panahon nagbabago, and at the same time the strategies and the systems are also changing, do we think that there still be a need a broader reimagining of the ideas that we are conveying, no, to our, not just to our institution but also in terms of our societal building? That's my question po.
I'll answer first. So maybe we
Age
can
before beauty.
yes. Maybe we can show everyone that technology, business, sciences, they're not enough. Yes, there are fuels for development, yes, but we will not be able to see or understand the historical patterns. For example, the rise of the research universities, they were conceptualized by humanities professor Schleiermacher, Humboldt. Without them, we will not be talking about research now. Okay, so historically also, if we try to understand the history of course, these are persons who conceptualize the research university. But if you dig deeper into the history, why research universities evolved or develop further, I think you can also relate them to war. For example, the development of Berlin University is the first research university. This was premised on the devastation of Prussia by the French-Prussian War. So, and then the development of American research universities, this was premised premised by World War II and the Cold War. And China's rise to power was fueled by the research universities. And I think Dr. Raymond's example of Vietnam, I think they were reflecting on their Civil War experience. They were reflecting on their being ravaged by their Civil War. And so they decided politically, decisively said, we must develop first our research universities. And now, in the Philippines now, I think we we did not suffer as much as those in Prussia or in America or this world, this wars that premise this development of the research universities. But now that we're threatened by China, I think it's the humanities and social sciences professors that can forcibly urge our country to support research and the development of research universities. Science and technology will not be able to see these things. It's the humanities and social sciences that will see these patterns, and teach our country. We will not be able to defend ourselves if we will not cultivate our knowledge, our own knowledge production. That's my answer.
Yeah. Wait. I'm trying to think about your question because it's related to the previous one. I think one of the assumptions that we're making right now is that because we have downgraded, I don't know what you mean by that. Perhaps because we have less units, perhaps we have uh what else? Less years of people of teaching these courses. That's why we don't think that there is humanities or social sciences in social development studies in the country. I think that's the wrong way of. No, sorry, it's not the wrong way. Perhaps there's another way of thinking about this idea of downgrading. There's no downgrading of humanities. In fact, right now, we have a lot of humanities people. Doc Hume is here. Palanca awardees are there. You know, we have a lot of humanities people, social science people, political scientists who are now in front of the TV cameras because of what's going on. So we have a lot of those people right now. I think the question is whether we are maximizing these experts in our universities. I agree with Doc Hume a while ago. When German universities, even in recent times, when the Australian universities, the US universities were really thinking about how to come up with the universities, they're looking at the humanities people, the social sciences people to really, well, get on board, get on board and really, you know, think about how to to fund, not in terms of money, to fund the intellectual enterprise of training. Again, I think we need to be, as you said in your question, we need to have a broader reimagining of what's going on right now. In fact, if you look at the data, we have more academics, we have more humanities people, social scientist people right now than in previous generations. That's a fact. We don't dispute that. Question is, how can we maximize these people in our universities, in our societies? I think that's another way of looking at this thing, because most of us are thinking about humanities, social sciences, and so on in terms of the number of load or courses that are available in the curriculum. I'm looking at it in terms of people and the production of these people, of how they generate knowledge. And we have it right now. That's why we have this conference. That's why we have a lot of published works by social scientists, by humanities. A question lang, how can we maximize them? Perhaps one way of maximizing them is having this kind of workshops. Or perhaps by writing in the public sphere, putting our ideas out there. We're maximizing our collective intelligence now. I'm not sure if I'm answering the question, but I'm really thinking about it because perhaps this is the mindset that some government officials are having. Kasi ano lang yan, philo lang yan. We don't need philosophy. Actually, they're in saying that they're doing philosophy because they're arguing for that. I don't know. Thanks. This is a really helpful exercise.
Pero boom, sinabi mo na, di ba, you have to maximize, no?
Yeah.
I get
Yeah.
that. Ibig sabihin, what you're saying is like, even if hindi ka nagtuturo, or even if you're not teaching philosophy subjects, you can do all these other things. But
Yeah.
you have to be part of an institution. And to be part of an institution, you should be teaching subjects because that's a reality check. Paano pag wala ng subjects na tinuturo? So how can these our young philosophers be employed in an institution and flourish if nobody's going to
Mhm.
be paying for their salaries? I
That's a
mean,
very,
di
very
ba?
good question.
Di
Actually,
ba?
that's yeah. That's a social reality that we have. Pero on the other hand, look at where our impeachment case is going right now. Look at the starring people. You have Chel Jokno who's a philo major. You have Ligutan who's also a philo major. You know, we're influencing, philosophers are influencing how people think,
Yeah.
not just in terms of the academy, but also uh, pero ang tanong how do we
No.
maximize our philosophical training?
Kasi
And how,
gainfully employed sila eh. They're gainfully employed. So,
yes, I think ang challenge will be for us in the academy. How would we make ourselves more relevant? I think it's happening now. It's happening now in terms of, ito nga, lumalabas na yung mga field majors out there. Even our songwriters like Marcos Adoro, sabi nga ni Doc yung philosophy major. Marcos Adoro was a philosophy major. I
sa
think
UP. Huh?
UP, si Yano is also a philosophy major. Si Dong Abay was also a philosophy major. So we have those people out there. Really, I'm not sure if you want Dong
Yeah.
Abay to be your to emulate Dong Abay or Marcos Adoro as philosophers, but you have those philosophers out there, and their philosophical training is helping them, well, shape society in one way. I don't know if I'm answering the question, but I'm really happy that we're thinking about this right now.
FYI lang guys, no, kasi medyo may edad na kami na Dr. Joaquin. Sila Marcos Adoro members yun ng Eraserheads, kung alam niyo.
Eraserhead, sorry. Dong
So,
Abay, member of
okay.
Yano, Banal na
Okay.
Aso. Yeah.
Okay, because some of the younger members here might not be too familiar, no? So,
Or far removed from their age. Yeah.
the Eraserheads were very popular in the 90s. But anyway, let's proceed now. Let's have another question here again from Mr. Cueto from UP Diliman, no? This is for Dr. Joaquin. So, Mr. Cueto, kung gusto mo magtanong, ready na.
Hi, Doc.
Yeah.
Wait. Where's my question? I have this memory goldfish. I wrote it here. It's lost in the chat box. Oh, here.
I can
Okay.
read it.
All right. Sige. For context, I noticed in the presentation how there are philosophers like Abula, Gripaldo. Their way of contribution seems parang kanya-kanya. And I don't know if it's like that really, but this is in the context of me viewing how Vienna, like, I don't know, Vienna circles or Frankfurt circles, collective philosophical groups, could it be that those groups, did they exist in history, or are they hidden beneath the institutions, or like, and yeah, and I'm also curious if they exist, how they were able to pave their way towards contribution, like, I don't know, formation of communist parties or cool stuff. I don't know if that's cool for you, but like, anyway, so yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Joe Ma. Ikaw talaga, communist ka pa rin hanggang ngayon. Yes. Okay. Mr. Cueto, welcome back to the Philippines. Just to tell you, I've been doing a lot of historical research on the formation of Filipino philosophy in the past few years. And I noticed that we are, at least most of our let's call them our foreparents, were not geniuses in terms of an individual genius. Rather, they worked with groups. One group is, as I mentioned a while ago, yung Pasky Boys. So these people were the founders of analytic philosophy in the Philippines. They were all from the University of the Philippines. So their head was this guy, Ricardo Pascual, who studied, as I've said, with Bertrand Russell, Ulo Carnap, and he brought analytic philosophy here in the country. His students were Alfredo Lagmay, who's the founder of one of the founders of Psicologiang Pilipina. Jose Encarnacion, who founded the UP School of Economics, which heavily influenced NEDA and our economic policies. Actually, the Marcos policies during the 1970s came from that group, yung Encarnacion group, as far as I noticed in their writings. Tapos you have someone else, Ruben Santos Cuyugan, who's a sociologist who came from Harvard, I think, and he brought in, a kind of cosmopolitan mindset in terms of sociology. Then you have Armando Bonifacio and so on. So that's the group that, who's the other guy? Cesar Mahul, who's a historian, political scientist, and one of the amazing writers of the book. So that's one group, the UP group, the Pasky Boys or the whatever group. Then you have the other group from De La Salle University, plug, headed by Quito. You have Ceniza, you have Tembresa, Abulad, and so on. You also have the Ateneo group. You have Ramon Reyes, Leo De Castro. But these people, the Ateneo and UST and La Salle group, came together and formed this Philippine Academy for Philosophical Research, which really influenced a lot of our educational policies from the 80s down until now, because Alfico is still championing a lot of indigenous philosophy, Chinese philosophy stuff. Actually, the curriculum that you studied was a product of their work in the 80s and the 90s, right? So that's another group. And you have the seminarians, the priests. They also have their group. So a lot of Filipino philosophers right now are doing stuff within groups, like the Mindanao group. You have women doing philosophy. You have, the Lasallian don't care stuff, philosophy, and so on. So yeah, we have a lot of groups here in the Philippines. We might not be as influential as the Vienna Circle or the Bloomsbury group or the Frankfurt Circle and so on, but we're doing stuff right now, and a lot of things are, wait for it, it's going to happen soon. A lot of things right now are came about because of the influence of those, I think. Now the question is, right, at present, what will be the influence that will be making the future change? I hope I answered your question. So,
Yes, thank you for clearing that up, Doc.
Mr. Cueto, napansin ko may isa ka pa tanong pero tatawag muna ako ng isang tao bago mo tanongin si Dr. Yuma kasi may nakapila kung okay lang ha. Okay. By the way, Boom, ito ba yung sinasabi mong group? I-share ko lang ha. Is this the one? Yung sinasabi mo? Yung pinost mo dati?
That's the original
Yun.
Philosophical
Okay.
Association of the Philippines.
Ayun, everybody, tignan niya, a piece of history, no? So,
Yeah.
yan. All right.
1976,
so, mga
yes.
bigat yan, no? Okay. So, yeah, wow. Very inspiring. Anyway, we have here, singatan isang, this a short question by Mr. Jewel Barroso of ATS, no? I don't know kanino naka-address to, Mr. Barroso. And Mr. Barroso, if you don't mind, what is ATS?
Asian Theological Seminary po in
Okay.
QC.
Okay. So, kanino ba to, Mr. Barroso? Kay Dr. Yum o kay Dr. JJ?
To both professors po sana.
Okay. So,
Yeah,
yeah. Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
thank you po. Yeah, this discussion po about yung helpful impact ng ating fields, humanities, philosophies. It reminded me of this one work by an epistemologist,
I think nakat yata si Mr. Barroso. Let's give him a half a minute, no? And I think maybe he's trying to reconnect. Sige lang. Okay. Sige. We'll give him about half a minute lang, guys, kasi he was here first dun sa chat area. Sir, when you were teaching sa San Beda, how many philo subjects were the students required, no? Both majors and non-philosophy majors. How many units? How many units sila?
At the time, I think we had two, philosophy of man and logic
Okay.
for the non-majors.
But for
Ethics was taken over by theology. Yes.
Okay. Pero for mga liberal arts students, mas marami.
For the philosophy majors, I think lesser than the usual because we had a double major. It was philosophy and human resource
Yeah.
development. It was applied philosophy.
Which I heard was very popular.
Yes. It was we had two sections then.
Actually, one of the vice mayor in our town in Batangas was your student before, si Attorney Chavez. He's now the vice mayor. He was part of your golden age of philosophy, I think. He remembers you fondly. He remembers you. Minsan, we'll talk about it minsan. Anyway,
yes.
Mr. Barroso, okay ka na ba? Kasi nakat ka yata kanina. Okay ka na ba?
Hello po.
Okay, sige,
Can
go.
I be heard na po?
Oh, nawala ka kanina.
Sorry po, nakadata lang po ako. I was talking about how our discussion reminded me of a social epistemologist Steve Fuller, who argued that if our knowledge production processes should be more just, we should have more inclusion. We should include more yung mga marginalized sectors mismo. And I'm just curious, how is our philosophical studies here in the Philippines have been doing on that aspect kung when it comes po sa, for example, policy research and yung mga iba pong benefits na nabanggit kanina, kung nagkakaroon po ba ng any sort of grounding or consultation with people na nai-impact nitong mga effects ng philosophy na ito. Ayun.
I'll answer first. Now with AI, I think we have better chances now. I remember I have an engagement in Samar. One event was the cleaning of Spanish period fortifications. And I was talking to TUPAD volunteers. A research paper was published in an international paper. And we were giving an overview to TUPAD volunteers. So I asked AI to give me a grassroots level presentation of an international Q1 journal, summary of a Q1 journal, grassroots level, in their own language. And AI gave me a very good presentation slide. I delivered the slide to the TUPAD volunteers who are in charge of cleaning the stone fortification somewhere in Samar, in a barangay in western Samar. Then I think many of them were taking down notes. And at the end of the lecture, they talked to me in Waray. I can understand a little Waray if it's written, if it's spoken slowly, but if it's spoken like a native, I could no longer understand. So meaning to say, they were convinced, they were able to understand, I think they thought that I can speak Waray. So I think with AI now, research communication beyond or below journal level communication, I think it can be facilitated by AI now, and we can bring this closer to the people. For philosophy, I have no experience yet with philosophy, but for my heritage studies group, I have experiences already. Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Jewel ba? Jewel Barroso for that question. Yeah, interesting. So I'm really thinking about your question. How is philosophy doing when it comes to involving marginalized sectors, knowledge production? Actually, I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that question is. Because one, I'm not sure what you mean by marginalized sector. Are you thinking about those who are not part of the elites, or those who have not been in the confines of a university setting or whatever? But the good thing about Filipino philosophy, like the research that Timbresa had, I think Mercado, Vitaliano Grospe, and so on, the older generation. So they were thinking of applying actually a kind of X5. So Janet Yasol Naval talked about X5 or experimental philosophy. So these early Filipino philosophers in the 70s, they were using a kind of experimental philosophy. They're using this linguistic analysis as trying to figure out whether this Filipino saying has some kind of philosophical import or whatever. So I think that's one of the innovations that they created in the 70s. Whether it involves marginalized sectors, perhaps because I know that Tim did some field work. Mercado also did some field work. He went to the provinces. Actually, they were from the provinces. So they studied those things and so on. But I'm thinking about your question in terms of right now, some Filipino philosophers are doing what's known, like Jerry Imbong is doing some indigenous philosophy, trying to get indigenous ideas and formulating it into a kind of philosophy, a wholesale philosophy, perhaps an ethics, perhaps a metaphysics or an epistemology. That's also a good project. Would that be a kind of philosophical research that involves the marginalized sectors? Perhaps, but I'm not sure what you mean by this question. But there's another aspect wherein I'm a bit iffy about using the marginalized sectors because at least uh, using them or involving them in your research because there's a kind of yung poverty scholarship that is using the poor as part of your research activities, then asking funding for those alleviating the poor or the marginalized sector without really giving them anything. So I'm a bit iffy about those kinds of projects. If that's what you mean by that, involving those marginalized people, then perhaps a better way is to really open up the knowledge production, let them in the discussion, educate them. I don't know. So I'm not sure how to answer this question because it's really hard to figure out. Perhaps another way of understanding your question is how could the jeepney driver outside understand my research in logic, the technical research I'm doing in logic? Perhaps that's what you meant. Well, one, the jeepney driver won't will care less about my technical work in logic. He won't care. Hindi naman siguro yun yung gusto mong sabihin. But one of our tasks as educators as well, not just as professional philosophers, but as educators, is really to give our ideas, make our ideas as, I don't want to say palatable, but open to everyone for them to read, for them to understand, perhaps to gain some knowledge. But I don't think that I'm, as a professional philosopher, I'm required, to really get them on board my field of research. I'm not sure. I hope that answers your question, Mr. Paroso. What do you think, Cesar?
Parang naalala ko si Sir Dante Leoncini, pag kinakausap siya ng mga mekaniko niya at yung mga ibang nagtatrabaho sa bahay niya, minsan carpenters, they ask him, Sir, ano po ba ang trabaho mo?
Trabaho mo,
Ano ba
yeah, yeah.
pinag-uusapan niyo sa philosophy? He just says, pinag-uusapan namin tungkol sa buhay.
Yeah, yung ganyang kwentuhan. Actually, that's also good. You could mine some common folk knowledge and so on. Pero nga, I'm a bit iffy about that because I feel that I'm exploiting them
Oo.
in a way, diba? Exploitative. I don't know if that's an exploitative kind of research. I'm not sure how to think about it. Yeah.
Okay, sige. Maybe bukas pag nakita niyo ulit si
Wag.
Dr. JJ, kausapin niyo siya. Hanapin
I'm
niyo
a
siya.
bit, dyan.
Okay, teka, mag-ano pa ako, teka. Wait lang, let me just see itong mga nakapila. Wait lang, Mr. Cueto, I'll give chance muna sa iba kasi ano sila medyo ano na tayo sa time, no? So we have here from UP Diliman, Mr. James Ainza. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, ha? James Ainza. Okay, so wait lang. Sorry. Nagkamali ako ng scroll. Sorry, my mistake. Wait lang. Ito pa kay Dr. Tan pa naka-address. Wait lang, sandali. Okay. Wait lang, Guys, excuse me lang na ano yung ano ako sa scroll ko. Wait lang, Wait lang. Tama ba to? Wait lang, wait lang. Here. Teka. Guys, sandali, wait lang. Na ano ko nagpasok sabay-sabay yung messages eh. Wait lang. Okay. Here. This is for Dr. Demeterio from Edgardo Del Rosario Jr. Okay, so Mr. Del Rosario, you can ask your question. Okay.
Good morning po ulit. Good morning, Doc. Demetrio, this questions for you. I'm also an IT member, a Indian from Abra. And in our generation right now, many of us don't know how to speak our own native tongue. Maybe out of 20 individuals who's living in our community in Abra, especially in our group, one-fourth from that 20 people can only speak our own native tongue. And I think it's continually declining due to, I would say, many of us would prefer to speak in Tagalog, in English already. And we don't have even, I don't know if we have, but I don't see any part of our curriculum that would have more focus on our native tongues or our dialect as Filipino. I would love to hear from you, Doc, if you have any this own country.
Okay. I will go back more than 100 years ago in Mindanao. I encountered this very interesting word from Ferdinand Blumentritt, and he called it Bisayanisasyon. Bisayanisasyon, talking about the tendency of a Lumad tribe to imitate the culture and language of the Visayans in Mindanao because they saw the Visayans as the more progressive group. So this is common in our country. Whenever an IP group is in touch with a mainland, a more dominant group, the tendency is for this IP group to copy the culture and the language of that dominant group. In order for them, that's a process of empowerment for them, so that they can integrate more easily into that progressive society. I think our multilingual education was supposed to be the key, but unfortunately they erased it. I'm not sure if it still exists in your region because it became optional. the key in that educational reform is not only to teach the language, but to teach the culture, because you cannot separate culture from language. For example, ethnoscience, for example, you talk about the medicinal practices and products in that forest area, in your IP territory, in your reservation, in your domain, in your IP domain. I think people will be very interested. I have a paper directed now by one of my students, and we're talking about the weaving practices of the Cordillera groups, and Tingian is one of the Cordillera groups. So talking about the dyes, talking about the fibers, talking about the technologies, I think we it becomes language becomes more interesting if we connect it to the culture. Talking about food, talking about farming techniques, even astronomy, even their local astronomy, it will be very interesting. So if you just make them study language, it can be a burden because they will say, no, we don't need that language. We need Ilocano. We need Tagalog more. We need English more. But if you are going to connect it to their culture, their material culture and intangible culture, then I think it becomes more urgent that we study the language so that we can preserve this material culture and immaterial culture. I think that's my answer. That's my answer. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Doc.
So we'll have, guys, so we'll have before the lunch break, kaya pa natin ng dalawang question. The first one will be from Mr. Roland Makawili from UPLB. And ito na, I saw your question na Mr. James Ainza kasi kanina nakita ko yung question mo kay Dr. Tan eh. So, can you just summarize na lang yung questions nyo so that at least matapos natin itong dalawa, no? So, let's have Mr. Makawili from UP Los Baños. All the way from UP Los Baños. Are you still here?
Thank you
Mr.
po.
Makawili? Okay, sige ho, sir.
Thank you to both our speakers no, for showing us the possibilities for Filipino philosophy. Pero yung question ko po ay para kay Dr. Demeterio. For those who are doing what Gripaldo called cultural approach, do you suggest ways through which we do not fall to romanticizing or essentializing Filipino concepts, which more often than not the case among the social sciences that are doing indigenization? I remember a comment by Zio Salazar on Mercado's work. Wala na raw bago when the direction is to show Filipino mind as the opposite of the Western mind. It was done already by the Westerners themselves. So, ano po bang pwede nating gawin? Lalo pat maraming gustong gumawa ng ganyang researches, no? Yung Filipino philosophy through, researching Filipino concepts. Thank you.
Thank you, Roland. I think I will be talking to you tomorrow. You're one of my assigned participants for our focus group discussion tomorrow. I will connect your question with the question addressed by Dr. Ko during his opening lecture a few days ago, or a week ago in UST. So the Discurso de Apertura of Dr. Alfredo Ko in UST. I listened through the YouTube recording of that talk, and he was mentioning that Filipino philosophy already have these concepts, scattered concepts, buot, gaba, loob, hiya, and so on. But Filipino philosophers failed to construct this into cohesive theories or cohesive discourses. I think the problem with Dr. Alfredo Ko, is that he did not believe that Filipino language is already intellectualized enough to be used in philosophizing. Because if you use Filipino language, and I think these categories that were already discovered can be threaded more naturally in Filipino language. Otherwise, if you set them in English language, then it's very difficult to construct a philosophical system. Meaning to say, we should be using Filipino language in order to philosophize using this concept. And of course, we have to do social linguistic historical research, like what Dr. Sue Salazar is an expert of, historical social linguistics. I think we have to also study with that. At least we go deep into our dictionaries, perhaps Spanish dictionaries, Spanish Filipino, Spanish Tagalog, Spanish Cebuano, Spanish Bicolano. I think they can already be helpful, as well as the very scant textualized materials we have. Of course, in Spanish, and some of course, are in our native Filipino languages. When they are in, for example, they're in novenas, in sermons, in prayers. These are used. That's why a while ago when I said paraluman can be male or female, I was basing it on a prayer, on an old prayer, Tagalog prayer, in which San Agustin was called a paraluman. So I think sociolinguistic research will offset the romanticization of our suddenly unearthed concepts, because concepts can change rapidly. For example, I have this experimental thought on Pentakasi. Pintakasi, for example. Pintakasi now is a cockfight. It's a cockfight during fiesta. But there was a time when Pentakasi was referring to the fiesta, not to the cockfight. There was a time when Pentakasi was referring to the patron saint. And the older meaning of Pentakasi is of course advocate, lawyer, or advocate. And you can even connect it to our Malay roots. Pintakasi is to call for mercy in Malay. So I think this comparative social linguistics can help us against the temptation or the slippery slope of going into romanticized nationalism. Yes. Thank you.
Can I have a short comment lang, Cesar, about
Okay.
this? Because I'm really interested about this kind of social linguistic approach as well. So I'm thinking we could do that in those terms. So you could have those kind of comparative social linguistics, or even intra semantic pragmatic analysis of what's going on in the language. For example, Tagalog, Waray, or whatever language. But right now, there's a move in philosophy that's known as globalizing philosophy. So some philosophers, like Victoria Harrison, that you'll meet later, she's thinking of how we could use the conceptual resources from other cultures to address specific philosophical questions that have been around since time immemorial. For example, some Indian philosophers, or sorry, some scholars of Indian philosophy are unearthing or going back to ancient Indian philosophy to address some questions in the philosophy of religion that are currently in vogue in the literature. Or some philosophers, I think the Italians are doing some experimental work to really mine what's going on in different social linguistic cultures to address questions about social justice, like linguistic injustices or epistemic injustices, and so on. So you can have that kind of social linguistic as part of your research, but you could extend that to some kind of philosophical question, like the questions about questions of the philosophy of religion, questions in metaphysics, epistemology, and so on, to make it more quote unquote philosophical. So I think that will be a good project, and NCCA will be happy to fund that kind of project. I think, right, Sir Yu?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Very
David's group, Dr. Rocky and David's group language.
These are very interesting questions and yung mga nagtatanong dito, no, mga ating mga young philosophers, napaka enthusiastic, no? We should be having this every year, no? Parang DLSU Philo Congress, no? So maybe pag-usapan yun ng mga admin yan, di ba? So would be nice to go. But anyway, we'll have one more question. But before that, let me remind everyone, no, please register and please answer the Google Forms na kailangan yung pirmahan, no? And before our lunch break, we have a very interesting question because it's about outcome-based education. Okay, so I think it's a very relevant question. So this is from Mr. James Ainza of UP Diliman. So pwede ka na magtanong, Mr. Ainza, if you're there, you can unmute your microphone
Good
and your
morning
camera.
po.
Yeah, okay.
Nadidinig naman po ako, no? Tama.
Yes. Oh, yes. Very good. Yeah.
Okay, so good morning everyone. So personally, reflecting on the condition of Filipino educational system, aligning with global standards of OBE, and the misapplication of OBE in our very own system, this has always been my problem po. Now, how does the OBE framework's emphasis on measurable competencies risk reducing humanities education to compliance rather than critical inquiry? And then, how can philosophical research challenge the institutionalized model of education that prioritizes producing workers over cultivating citizens? Because let's face it though, ang mga HEIs po natin sa Pilipinas, they are more focusing on the employability of Filipino students. Now, we cannot truly argue against that because we Filipinos need to be employed kasi that's our social reality, socio-economic reality. We need to work. We need at least we need some income, generally speaking, because we need to survive. Now, with that, I leave the question for the both professors po. Thank you po.
Mas passionate si JJ nito, OBE. JJ, ikaw na, Dr. JJ.
I'm not really passionate about OBE. Cesar's dissertation is on OBE. No, pero kidding aside, I think, yeah, that's true. But again, the challenge for us philosophers, I think most of you have been involved in discussing with Ched yung bagong whatever proposal again. I think the challenge for us is really to emphasize that OBE, as you, Ched, is implementing it, is not OBE, ika nga ni Cesar Honson. That's not OBE. That's not what outcomes-based.
Si Spade din nagsabi doon.
Oo nga. It's not outcome-based education. It's a good framework to think about. To be honest, it's a good framework in thinking about how to teach, how to have concrete outputs out of your courses. That's a good innovation. That's a terrific idea. However, some of our officials, I'm not naming names, Win Gatchalian, some of them are really thinking about employability stuff. As you have said, that's a social reality that we have, of course. But on the other hand, we need to think about how to cultivate not just, great employees, but cultured citizens of our country. So that's the best way I can put it. But don't think that OBE is bad. It's not OBE that's bad. It's the people who are trying to implement it. It's bad. That's why we need to go to the forum or the fora that Ched is organizing every year or every month na ngayon. Write to your Congress people. I've been in contact with some of our Congress people like si Chel Jokno about this issue. Kasi that's the best way of really improving our lot as philosophers or as academicians here. Go to your Congress people, go to your deans, like my dean here, talk to them, and really advocate for the value of the humanities and philosophy. I think that's the best way. But again, OBE is not that. It's not bad. It's a good framework to think about. But let's be clear about how to implement.
I think it's in the implementation. When I was working on my dissertation, I was able to, through a common friend, email Dr. Spade and he answered dun sa common friend, pinadala sa akin. Ang ano niya talaga is that it's nagiging focus tayo sa accreditation kasi
Yeah.
Yun sa measurability. But actually, if you look at Spade's framework, hindi siya about yung measurability talaga no? Actually, it gives a lot of freedom to the instructors, to the teacher. And yun ang maganda doon. Yun ang maganda sa kanya. Pero siguro nga tama ka, it's the implementation. And well, again, marami pang mahaba-habang ika nga na San Light, mahaba-habang usapan o inuman pa yan, no? Sabi nga ng But anyway, guys,
wait. Just a last word
sige,
about
sige.
that.
Okay, go.
Please, we need to talk to our Ched people. That's why we invited Ched here. That's the ulterior motive. Let's talk to them. really emphasize the importance of philosophy and the humanities in the academy, the university.
Yeah, actually ganda yun. Actually, among the participants here, at the end of the 2-day seminar, we can also have a parang position na pwede nating i-share. Actually, it would be nice also. But anyway, guys, that's all the time we have, no? I'm sure you have more questions for Dr. Dimter and Dr. Joaquin. Well, if we are face to face tomorrow, and if you see them, maybe you can approach them, okay, and maybe they can answer some of your inquiries also. But thank you very much a lot to all those who participated in the discussion. There are a few more questions here, but again, we're limited by time. But again, thank you very much, guys. Thank you for your enthusiasm. It's energizing on especially during these times when the weather is not cooperating.